Sai Ram everyone. With Swami's infinite grace and love, today we got the opportunity to start our study circle on Sai Bhagavatham based on Satyam Shivam Sundaram. This is a great way to combine celebration and sadhana, where we can immerse ourselves in the glory of our dear Swami's life in his 100th birth year. Brother Sham Chidambar kindly agreed to spearhead this effort together with several other experienced study circle facilitators. I am handing over to Brother Sham for today's session. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, everybody. Thank you all for joining in this journey of the Sathya Sai Bhagavatham. In the words of Professor Venkatraman, the former Vice Chancellor of Swami's University, never in the history of human civilization have so many people been showered so much love for so many years by one person. That one person is Swami. It is impossible to comprehend the mystery and majesty of Swami, but we can marvel it and we can enjoy the drama of his life. We are here in these sessions to celebrate his amazing story that began in 1926. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the world as it was in 1926, the year Sri Sathya Sai Baba was born. The world was changing at a breathtaking pace. In the West, the roar of industrial machines filled the air. The first commercial airplanes were taking flight, and cities were glowing with electric lights. But beneath this progress, dark clouds were forming. In America, the Great Depression was only a few years away. And in Europe, the seeds of the Second World War were already being sown. A young German man in his 30s named Adolf Hitler had just become head of the Nazi Party. He was preparing to publish his book Mein Kampf, and under his supervision, the deadly SS was formed. The Nazi Party would soon sweep into power in a few short years, and terrible things were going to follow. Meanwhile, in India, a different battle was being fought, not with guns, but with the power of Satyagraha, the product of truth and non-violence. Another young man, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, had become head of the Indian National Congress, and he was launching a movement called Swaraj or self-rule. Protests filled the air, and the voices of leaders like Nehru and Patel were inspiring millions. Big changes were coming. After nearly 200 years of British rule, India was rapidly marching towards freedom and independence. In this small, remote village of Puttaparthi, far from the political turmoil, a divine child was about to be born, one whose life would transform the world in an entirely different way. Puttaparthi, like most villages at that time, had no electricity, no hospitals, no high school, let alone college. Economic insecurity was a given. Lack of access to education, healthcare, public sanitation, or transportation were all facts of life. To most people, those things were the stuff of dreams and privilege. There were no roads that led into the village of Puttaparthi. The closest road was a few miles away, and one had to cross a river to get to it. Farmers tilled the land with their plows, and bullock carts were the only mode of transportation. Few people had ever seen a car or a train. Superstitions and caste divisions shaped daily life. Professor Kasturi, Swami's biographer and the author of Satyam Shivam Sundaram, described Puttaparthi as being a stone's throw from the Stone Age. Yet, it was in this setting, so untouched by both the good and bad of modernity, even the modernity of the 1920s, that divinity chose to reveal itself. Let us read some of the text from the very few first pages of Satyam Shivam Sundaram, written by Swami's Valmiki, Sri Kasturi.
The Lord in Vaikuntha heard the prayer of the mother. He decided on the place where he had to take a human form. He came. The material sheath which the Lord once again willed to wear was formed. It grew from week to week. Mysterious intimations of the impending incarnation disturbed the even tenor of Pedda Venkama's family life. For example, there was the twang of the tambura. Since the brothers and the father were all very much interested in the village operas on Puranic incidents, and since one play or other was always being rehearsed at home, there was a substantially big tambura leaning against the wall and a maddel or drum on the floor beneath. These two were silent only when the inmates of the house retired for the night. But as the birth of the son for whom Mother Ishwaramma prayed announced itself as imminent, the house was awakened at midnight, and sometimes even later, by the tambura twanging automatically and the maddel beating rhythmically as if an expert hand was handling it. Various theories were promulgated to explain this phenomenon by the wise men of the village. But since they only added to the mystery, Pedda Venkaparaju hurried to Bukpatnam, where there was a Shastri, learned Brahmin, on whose interpretation he could place faith. The Shastri said that it was an auspicious occurrence. It meant the presence of a Shakti, a beneficent power, conferring harmony, melody, order, symmetry, spiritual elevation and joy.
The divine had willed, and he had descended on earth for our upliftment. He wanted us to know the truth of Satyam Shivam Sundaram, truth of spaciousness and beauty, by seeking within to go beyond the unreal and know the real through the path of self. The quintessence of Bhagavan's life and teachings speak about one fragrance alone. He has come to remind us to collect that treasure which lies within and that which is our birthright, and yet we have forgotten to collect it as our very own. His sacrifice speaks of a saga of love that we must emulate, practice, and represent ourselves as his light of love.
The child became the pet of the entire village of Puttaparthi, and the farmers and cowherds vied with each other in fondling it and feeding it and playing with its lovely silken curls. Its charming smile attracted everyone. Pedda Venkaparaju's house was always full of visitors who came on some pretext or the other and stayed on round the cradle, singing lullabies and showering caresses, forgetting their humdrum lives. Soon, the fragrance of the jasmine bud filled the air. Like a lighted lamp, Sathya moved about the house, and laughter tinkled in the street when he lisped his sweet vocabulary of sounds. It was noticed by all with wonder that he delighted in having broad vibhuti markings on his forehead, and that he insisted on the marks being renewed as and when they wore off. He also preferred to have a circular kumkum dot in the center of his broad forehead, though for fear of the evil eye, the mother seldom satisfied this desire. And so, he had to seek out the receptacle from the toilet box of his sisters and himself dab the kumkum on. He is Shiva, he is Shakti, he must have both vibhuti and kumkum, sacred ash and red ochre.
Sathya would frequent the home of the village Karnam, and his wife Subhama became a beloved foster mother to Sathya, just like Yashoda was to Krishna. She and Kamalama, the Karnam's second wife, were among the earliest to recognize Satya's divinity, and they would look after Sathya so lovingly, feed him, play with him, and opened their home to him. In the villages of India in the 1930s, with their rigid caste system, this was amazing in and of itself. Rich Brahmin women interacting so closely and freely with a young boy of a lower caste. They would cook for him, and whatever they gave him, he would mix everything together into big balls and eat it just like that, and he would distribute it like that to other people. In later years, Subhama and Kamalama would cook for all the people who came to Sathya to seek his help and counsel. They would ask, "Why do you see all these people?" He would say, "If I don't see them now, not even a crow will come to me. But in the years to come, thousands and thousands of people will come here seeking me." Sathya would take Kamalama and Subhama to the Kalpavriksha tree every day and ask them to take fruits or vegetables, whatever they needed for their cooking. He would often give people whatever they asked from this tree, even hot, crisp dosas.
While the world outside was caught in economic hardship and political conflict, little Sathya was enchanting those around him with his childlike charm and boundless love. Unlike other children, he showed no interest in possessions or instant personal satisfaction. Instead, he was happy and content with the simple things his family could afford, and would secretly share his food with beggars, comfort the sick, and teach his playmates the importance of kindness. One day, young Sathya was walking through the village when he noticed a group of men gathered in a circle cheering loudly. As he got closer, he saw what was happening. A cockfight was taking place. The roosters were forced to fight each other, sometimes even with sharp blades attached to their legs. The villagers found it entertaining, but Sathya was deeply disturbed. He couldn't just stand by. He walked straight into the group and in a firm voice said, "Stop this. You must not make these birds suffer for your amusement." The men were startled. Here was a young boy standing fearlessly, telling them to end something they had done for years. But there was something in his voice, a quiet authority, a power beyond his age. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then slowly, the fight stopped. The villagers were taken aback, unsure of what to do next. Some of them, irritated, went to complain to Sathya's grandfather, Kondamaraju, who listened patiently and then smiled. Yes, Sathya is a boy, but he is right. What he is saying is true. In the name of sport, you have no right to harm these innocent birds. If you want entertainment, fight another way, one that does not involve cruelty. In the 1930s, most villagers in Puttaparthi had never been to school. There were no proper teachers, no classrooms, and life revolved around farming. One day, a group of young men approached Sathya, still a student himself, and asked, "Sathya, can you teach us to read and write?" Without hesitation, he said, "Yes, let's start a school." But there was no school building, no desks, no chalkboard. So Sathya found an empty plot of land owned by the Karnam, and the men sat on the ground. He asked them to spread sand before them, and using his fingers, he drew letters in the sand to teach them the alphabet. Slowly, they began to read and write. But Sathya didn't stop there. He encouraged them to find ways to support their learning. He said, "Grow vegetables or fruit in your backyard and sell them. And then you can buy slates and pencils." Inspired by his words, some villagers actually did it. Even though he was just a schoolboy, Sathya found time to teach others. His love for education was not just about reading and writing. It was about uplifting people and revealing their true potential. What began as a simple request became a small movement of learning, guided by a boy who was already shaping the future of Puttaparthi and the whole world. Meanwhile, Sathya's own schooling continued. In 1936, at age 10, he moved to Puttaparthi Higher Elementary School, walking 2.5 miles daily. Then, in the mid-1940s, at age 14, his family sent him to Uruvakonda, where his brother Seshamaraju was studying. They hoped better education would lead him to a stable government job, what people call a sarkari naukri, a secure career with a steady income, social prestige, and a pension for retirement. We can now hear an audio excerpt of Swami narrating his own school moves in the period 1936 to Bokapatnam and then in 1940 to Uruvakonda.
A place called Puttaparthi, and there in a school, a class which was then known as ESLC, and this body was engaged in studying in that class. ఈ విధంగా పోతూ వస్తున్నప్పుడు పబ్లిక్ ఎగ్జామినేషన్స్ అని ఆ ఈఎస్ఎల్సికి అప్పుడు ప్రారంభమైంది. In those days, the public examination commenced for this class called the ESLC. ఈ పబ్లిక్ ఎగ్జామినేషన్స్ పెనుగొండలో పెట్టారు. This public examination was held in Penugonda. బుక్కపట్నం నుంచి పెనుగొండ పోవాలంటే ఏదో ఒక అమెరికానో రష్యానో పోయినంత పెద్ద భయం ఆనాడు. In those days, to travel from Puttaparthi to Penugonda was like making a long journey either to America or to Russia. That was the condition. అప్పుడు బుక్కపట్నానికి కూడా బస్సులు లేవు, రోడ్డు లేదు. కేవలము అప్పుడు కొత్తగా పెనుగొండకు ఒక రైలు పడింది. ఈ రైలు గురించి అనేక మంది పల్లెల వారంతా కూడా చాలా విచిత్రంగా మాట్లాడుకునేటువంటి వాళ్ళు. ఏదో ఒక కన్ను మాత్రమే ఉందట, చాలా పెద్ద రోకట బండ మాదిరి ఒక వస్తుందట, అది ఆ రకంగా తిరిగిపోతుందట అని దాన్ని చూడటానికి అనేక మంది కొంత బండు కట్టుకొని పోయేటువంటి వాళ్ళు. At that time, there was no bus to Puttaparthi. There was not even a road to Puttaparthi. And only then a railway came to Penugonda. And this was a great sight. Many people in the villages used to talk strangely about this train. They used to say some long snake-like thing was crawling on the rails. They also used to say it has got only one eye is shining in front of the train. This kind of strange description was being given of the train. ఈ విధంగా ఉంటున్న సమయంలో నేను పుట్టపర్తి నుంచి ఒక్కడు మాత్రమే పోవాల్సి వచ్చింది. While this was the situation, I had to travel from Puttaparthi alone. అందువల్ల మీకు తెలిసే ఉంటుంటుంది, ఇంత దూరము పరదేశానికి పంపించాలా మా పిల్లవాడిని, ఈ దేహాన్ని కన్న తల్లి అన్ని రకాలుగాను ఏదో కొంచెం మురుకులు, కొన్ని నిప్పట్లు ఇలాంటివంతా చేసి కట్టి ఒక చిన్న మూట కట్టి, అప్పుడు టిఫిన్ ఖర్చు కూడా లేదు, ఒక చిన్న మూట కట్టి పంపించడం. ఈ పంపించే దాంట్లో కూడా ఏమి ఒకే అందరూ బంధువులంతా ఏడ్చటమే, వెంకమ్మ పారకమ్మ ఎంత దూరమో ఎప్పుడు వస్తాడో పెనుగొండ పోయావు. ఆనాడు అలాంటి పరిస్థితిలో ఉంటుండేటువంటి పెనుగొండకు పుట్టపర్తికి ఉన్న సంబంధం. The conditions at that time were such that since I had to travel alone, all the relations, the mother for this body thought that I was going to a long distance and therefore some trouble was involved. She prepared sweets, she prepared muruku, she prepared various things for me to eat, and there was no tiffin carrier in those days. So this was all tied up in a small bundle in a cloth and this was given to me. Not only that, all the relations, Venkamma, Parvatamma, they were all crying that I was going away to a long distance. అప్పుడు బుక్కపట్నంకు వరకు కూడా అందరూ వచ్చారు నాతో ఒక ఎడ్ల బండిలో. They all travelled together with me up to Puttaparthi in a carriage which was drawn by oxen. A bullock cart. అక్కడ నుంచి కొంతమంది పిల్లలు మేము 8 మంది చేరి ఒక ఎడ్ల బండి తీసుకున్నాం. అక్కడ నుంచి పెనుగొండ వరకు ఎడ్ల బండిలోనే పోవాలి. 8 of the boys together joined and engaged one bullock cart to go up to Penugonda. మా వెంట ఒక టీచర్ వచ్చేసేస్తారు. Along these 8 boys was one teacher. అది ఒక మైలు దూరం బుల్లక్ కార్ట్ లో పోతే 5 మైళ్ళ దూరం నడచాలి మేము. ఎందుకంటే అది సరైనటువంటి రోడ్డు కాదు, చాలా ఎత్తు బలం ఉండటం చేత ఆ ఎత్తు వచ్చినప్పటికీ మేము దిగేసేయాలి. ఈ రకంగా నిజంగా నడుచుకొని పోయితేనే బాగుండేది, కానీ ఈ ఎడ్లబండి ఎక్కుతాం దిగుతాం అందులో నేను అప్పుడు చిన్న ఇప్పుడే ఇది చెప్తున్నాను. అప్పుడు 9వ సంవత్సరము, చాలా చిన్నగా ఉంటున్నాను, నాకంటే ఇంకా చిన్నపిల్లలుగా ఉంటున్నారు. అందరినీ ఒకరికొకరు ఆ టీచర్ ఎత్తేది పైన పెట్టేది, ఆయన బండిలో వచ్చి ఈ రకంగా ఆనాటి టీచర్స్ కూడా చాలా మంచివారు. The road was not a plain road. There were several ups and downs. And to travel in a bullock cart for 1 mile, because of the ups and downs on the road, every time there is an up or down, we had to get down the bullock cart. That getting down the bullock cart, walking, getting back into the bullock cart meant that to make a journey of 1 mile, we had to walk 5 miles. And it was much easier to walk rather than get in and get out of the bullock cart. And these were all young little boys. I myself was very small, and the teachers used to lift these little boys, put them in the bullock cart and put them out of the bullock cart again and again. ఈ విధంగా వెళ్లి మేము తెల్లవారు 5 గంటలకు బయలుదేరినటువంటి వాళ్ళము రాత్రి 9 గంటలకు పెనుగొండ పోయి చేరుకున్నాం. In this way, those of us who started at 5 a.m. in the morning travelled all the way to Penugonda and reached Penugonda at 9 p.m. in the night.
At discussion time, after Swami's video on challenges commuting to Penukonda, participants were asked as to what stuck their hearts the most after listening and watching the video presentation. A second question was how his divinity was recognized, even at that tender age. Audience participation was robust, recounting their travels to Puttaparthi in the early days. Trials and challenges were part of the process to get to divinity. Swami's choice of place, time and family, when he could have willed to be anywhere more comfortable. Importantly, it was discussed that God chooses to be where his devotees are. They were in this simple village of Puttaparthi, where he was born. These are powerful insights, and it's clear that Swami's early years resonate deeply. We'll have more time to reflect on these points later, but for now, let's shift back to our journey through Swami's early years. When Sathya was about 7 years old, he moved in with his grandfather, with whom he had a very special relationship. Kondam Raju was a unique individual with not just affection but deep reverence to Sathya. Let us watch this next video segment about those years. I think you will really enjoy this.
And so it was that young Sathya moved in with his grandfather to live in a small hut away from the family and look after him. It was not an easy job. He had to study, but he also had to cook, keep house, wash clothes, and so on. There were so many things to do. So Satya's daily routine was quite strenuous. He would get up very early, hurriedly make breakfast, cook lunch, serve breakfast for grandpa, grab some breakfast himself, collect his books, and go to school. At lunchtime, he would run back, give his grandfather lunch, eat something himself, and then run back again to school. In the evening, he would come and there would be so many other chores to do, including preparing dinner. And after that, he would have to study. In those days, there was no electricity and he had to study using a kerosene lamp. And he was just 7 years old, not more than that. So, it was life. So, life was very hard, even for God, shall I say. Now you can ask, why did Swami have to do all that? Why did he have to go through such a difficult life? What was there in it for him? That's the kind of question you and I would ask. Well, if you have asked that question, I leave you to figure out the answer. Let me now turn to Satya's cooking, because he was a very good cook. So Swami himself has told me. One of his specialities was rasam. For those of you who do not know, rasam is a kind of South Indian soup. Those of you who have come to Puttaparthi and eaten in the South Indian canteen obviously must know what rasam is. The point is, Satya was very good at preparing rasam, especially pepper rasam. And his grandfather loved it, and he would look forward to the day whenever it was made. And as Satya was cooking, the aroma of rasam would fill the whole hut, and Kondama would be just smelling it and say, "Come on, finish soon, I want to eat. I'm waiting for the rasam." Now one day, as Satya was busy preparing rasam, he heard a voice from outside. It was the voice of a very sick person. Satya went to the door, opened the door, and looked outside, and there was a poor man, a beggar, who was also sick, having cold and cough and all that. He said, "Young boy, I am very sick. I am having a lot of cold. I get the smell of hot rasam. Can you give me some rasam? It would be very good for me." By the way, even today, doctors in South India prescribe hot rasam as a good cure for cold. Even doctors with advanced medical degrees do that. Anyway, this beggar asked, "Can you give me some rasam?" So Satya ran inside and got a tumbler, aluminium tumbler, filled it with rasam and gave it to the beggar. He drank it, felt very happy and went away. The story did not end there. He went and told that boy there, he makes very good rasam, he gave it to me, and I'm now feeling better. He was living in a colony where very poor people lived, and many of them were beggars. And from that day onwards, every day all of these people would come to Kondamaraju's hut and queue outside for rasam service. And Kondamaraju was such a generous man. He said, "Satya, these people are standing, so you better make rasam, a pot full of rasam." And long before Narayan Seva started, rasam Seva started in Kondamaraju's hut long ago. And one good fallout was doctors lost their business because nobody had cold and fever. Swami himself told me. When did he tell me? He told me when I was Vice Chancellor, and he used to often call me to discuss university affairs. But now and then he would chit-chat, as they say. One day he asked me, "Do you know cooking?" I said, "Yes, Swami, I can cook to some extent." "You know how to make upma?" Upma is one of the dishes that we make. I said, "Yes, Swami." "Tell me the recipe." I told it. He looked at me and said, "Yuck, you call that upma? Even a dog won't eat it." What could I say? Then he said, "I'll tell you how upma must be prepared." So he started giving me the recipe. Boy, by the time he finished the recipe, the recipe. I wish he had actually made that because even the recipe was tasting very nice. Okay, let me move on.
When Satya was 10 years old, he started a bhajan group in Puttaparthi. He gathered about 16 to 18 boys. They all wore similar ochre clothes, carried small flags, and walked barefoot through the village. They sang bhajans with great devotion, their anklets jingling as they moved. The bhajans were in praise of Lord Panduranga of Pandharpur. But Satya also introduced new songs. Some villagers noticed that these bhajans spoke of a place they had never heard of, like Shirdi, and a name, Sai. Later, many wondered if he was already pointing toward Shirdi Sai Baba that time. As they walked through the village, people stopped what they were doing. Women stood in their doorways with folded hands. Elderly men sat quietly listening. Satya's voice was different. It touched people's hearts. Then something amazing happened. A cholera outbreak spread in nearby villages. Many people died, but in Puttaparthi, not a single person was affected. The villagers believed that Satya's bhajan group had protected them. They felt that the divine vibrations from the singing had purified the air. Here one anecdote. An engineer with Radio Sai recorded an orchestra to accommodate Swami's voice. He realized it fell off. Something was not quite same and frequencies seemed different. He researched and found that Swami's pitch is almost always at 432 Hz, whereas instruments are tuned to work at 440 Hz. Further research tells us the entire universe radiates at 432 Hz, which is very healing, soothing, and natural. This matters because it shows the healing properties of our beloved Bhagavan's voice. And if sound carries vibrations and this passes off as energy, then it will heal each of us. For the boys, it was just bhajans. For the villagers, it was a miracle. But later, people realized something deeper. This was not just music. It was a sign of what was to come. Satya was already leading people to the path of devotion, opening the world to them while protecting them with his grace. I thought we can recapture that magic from the Pandhari Bhajan group to sing a Vitthala Bhajan. Please join in the chorus.
Purandara Ranga Hare Vitthala, Purandara Ranga Hare Vitthala, Pandari Ranga Hare Vitthala, Pandari Ranga Hare Vitthala, Purandara Ranga Hare Vitthala.
From a young age, Satya's way with lyrics and music was remarkable. His voice was clear, his poetry effortless, and his songs had a natural rhythm that captured people's attention. Even local shopkeepers noticed his talent. In Kamalapuram, a store owner named Kote Subbanna had an idea. Why not ask Satya to create a song to promote his shop? What happened next was a glimpse of Satya's creativity and leadership. Now, let's listen to Swami himself narrating this wonderful story.
అప్పుడు ఈ కవిత్వాలంతా రాస్తున్నానని కొట్టేసి మనకు తెలుసు బాగా. This shopkeeper, Kotte Suparna, knew that I was even then writing and composing poetry. అప్పుడప్పుడు నా స్కూల్కి పోతే మిడిల్ స్కూల్ కు అక్కడ కూడా వచ్చి కాచుకొని ఉండేటువంటి ఏదైనా ఏంటంటే మాకు పలానా మంది వచ్చింది, పలానిది వచ్చింది, పలానా క్లాస్ వచ్చింది, లేకపోతే జనరల్ షాప్ గా ఉంది, ఏమైనా అడ్వర్టైజ్ కోసమని మేము పిల్లలతో పాడించుకుంటూ పోతాం, ఏమైనా కొన్ని రాసిస్తావా అట్లా ఇట్లా అని చెప్పి అడిగేటువంటి వాడు. He used to come to the school and wait in front of the school, and he would ask me, in my shop I have got some new medicine and I want to sell that medicine. Will you give me some kind of a poem which you will compose so that I can use the poem as an advertisement and thereby sell my medicine? ఆనాటి కాలంలో ఏంటంటే ఒక పెద్ద తడక ఉండేది, చిన్న తడక, దానికి ఒక కర్ర ఇక్కడ పెట్టి ఉండేది. ఆ తడక పైన ఈ కాగితం రాసుకునేది. కొంతమంది పిల్లలతో పాటలు పాడించుకుంటూ బజార్లమ్మడి అతను అడ్వర్టైజ్ చేయించుకుంటూ పోయేటువంటి. In those days the method of advertisement was to have a small plaque. On the plaque you will write out the poem. There will be a stick at the end of which this plaque is held. These boys will be holding that stick and the plaque in their hand, and the boys will go in procession singing that particular song of advertisement, and that is the manner of advertising in those days. అప్పుడు కొత్తగా బాలభాస్కర అనే ఒక మంది వచ్చింది. At that time he is going to sing now. At that time there was a new medicine in his shop by name Balabhaskara. అప్పుడు ఆయనకు ఒక రాష్ట్రం, దొరికే దొరికే బాలభాస్కర బాలకులారా రండి బాలకులారా, దొరికే దొరికే బాలభాస్కర బాలకులారా రండి బాలకులారా, కడుపుబ్బురము కాళ్ళవాపులు చేతి మోదులను చెడుగుల నుండి అజాగరూక పోషణ నుండి అస్పృశ్య వ్యాధుల నుండి అజీర్ణ వీరేచనముల నుండి అన్నిటికీ ఇది బాగవునండి బాలకులారా రండి బాలకులారా. అది ఎక్కడ అని అడిగారన్న అందరికీ తెలిసినదేనన్న, అదిగదిగో కొట్టే సుబ్బన్న అందరి ఎంతో పిచ్చియన్న బాలకులారా రండి బాలకులారా. పండిత గోపాలాచార్యుల పావనమైన తానికన్న బాలకులారా అని ఈ పాట రాస్తే అతను చాలా ఆనందమైపోయింది. బాగా పాటలు నేర్పించేసి చక్కగా డబ్బులు ఎక్కించేసింది. I composed the poem which was in the form of an advertisement for the Balabhaskara, and calling upon the boys that here is a new medicine called Balabhaskara. If you have got stomachache, if you have got motions, if you have got a disorder in your stomach of any kind, here is a famous medicine called Balabhaskara. It will cure you in no time. This has come from the hands of a distinguished physician called Gopalacharya. You can obtain this in the shop of Kotte Suparna. Go and buy it. This is the kind of advertising poem which I wrote, and the boys began singing this poem, and it made a tremendous success of the sale. సరే, ఈ విధమైనటువంటి పాట రాయించేటప్పటికి ఇంకా అన్ని షాపుల వాళ్ళు వస్తున్నారు, నా స్కూల్ దగ్గరికి ఇక్కడికి వస్తున్నారు, అక్కడికి వస్తున్నారు, రాసిన చేయాలి మాకు ఫలాని విషయంలో ఫలాని విషయం అని డీటెయిల్స్ అంతా ఇచ్చేస్తుంది. ఈ విధంగా 2-3 దానికి రాసేసరికి ఇది విశేషం రాసి. When this poem, which was composed by me, was being sung, many shopkeepers learned that this poem was composed by me, and many shopkeepers had a lot of unsold books. They began coming to me and giving me details of their books and asking me to compose poems in regard to whatever they want to advertise and they want to sell. సరే, ఇప్పుడు ఇంకా లీవులుగా ఉంటున్నారు కదా అని నువ్వు పుట్టపర్తి వెళ్ళిపో, ఇక్కడంతా నువ్వు ఉండకూడదు, ఇక్కడంతా ఉంటుంది, లేకపోతే ఇంత వ్యాపారం అంతా చేస్తున్నా అట్లా ఇట్లా అని చాలా ఆర్చి చేసి నేను పుట్టపర్తి పంపించేసాను. That I composed these poems and that I helped these shopkeepers came to be known to Sasamarazu the brother. Immediately Sasamarazu called me and said, "No, you are doing a lot of business here. You have got holidays. There is no reason why you should stay here. You better go back to Puttaparthi."
Let's stop here today in terms of the narrative arc of Swami's story and engage in some discussion about what appeals to us and what we have seen so far.
The discussion that followed was centered on lessons taught by Sathya from such a young age, with "My life is my message," Sathya setting a wonderful example for us all to follow. Service, education and drawing all to the divine with music, all of which began very early, even before he became Sai Baba or Swami.
What we have seen today are mere glimpses of a young Satya who is already shaping the world around him. But what do these glimpses tell us about the future? This is just the beginning. We are not merely recounting history. We are walking down this 100-year-old road together. As we move forward, step by step, story by story, let's reflect. Where do we see Swami's presence in our own lives? And how is his story shaping ours? We will continue next time. Thank you all for joining us with so much love and so much devotion. Sai Ram.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Sai Ram.